I never thought buying my dream house would turn into this wild saga that nearly tore apart a whole neighborhood. But here we are, Alex Harlan, sitting on my porch overlooking Pine Ridge Estates, finally at peace after what felt like a lifetime of battles. It all started when I moved into this custom-built place on the hill just outside the HOA boundaries, a spot I'd scouted for years because, after spending a decade as a county building inspector, I knew exactly what I wanted: freedom, no nosy committees telling me how to paint my fence or trim my hedges. My house was my fortress, solid reinforced gates, solar panels humming away for off-grid power, a sparkling private pool tucked in the backyard, all of it screaming independence, no strings attached to the HOA down below. But trouble knocked on my door faster than I could unpack the last box, literally, in the form of Susan Whitaker, the HOA president, striding up my driveway with that forced smile people wear when they're about to ask for something they think they're entitled to. She introduced herself, all bubbly at first, saying how the neighborhood had this pool rotation tradition where folks shared access to keep things communal and fun, and wouldn't it be great if I joined in? Seeing as my pool looked so inviting from the street, I chuckled a bit, keeping it light, and told her straight up, "Appreciate the invite, Susan, but my property's not part of the HOA's private, built that way on purpose, so the pool's just for me and mine." She nodded, but her eyes narrowed just a touch, and as she walked away, she tossed over her shoulder something about how they kept an eye on adjacent properties for the overall well-being of the community, like a veiled warning wrapped in neighborly concern. Deep down, I felt this twinge of unease. I'd seen enough HOA dramas in my inspector days to know power like hers often came from insecurity, maybe jealousy over folks like me who opted out, or perhaps her own grip on the neighborhood slipping as more people questioned her iron fist rules. Things escalated quick after that, pulling me into a conflict I never asked for but couldn't ignore. A few days later, an anonymous note showed up in my mailbox. "Refusing to cooperate with the community has been noted. Expect consequences." It was handwritten, childish almost, but it hit me like a gut punch. Who does that, right? I shrugged it off at first, figuring it was some petty prank, but then one afternoon, I glance out my window and see Susan and two of her cronies slipping through my rear gate like they owned the place, towels in hand, splashing into my pool without a care. My blood boiled. This wasn't just rude. It was trespassing, an invasion born from her entitlement, probably fueled by years of bullying folks into submission to maintain her little kingdom down there. I hit the siren alarm I'd installed, just a loud wail to scare off critters originally, and stormed out, yelling, "What the hell do you think you're doing? This is private property, get out now." Susan turned, dripping wet, with this smug grin, saying, "Oh, Alex, relax, we're just borrowing it for a bit. It's for the greater good, community spirit." Her friends giggled nervously, but I wasn't having it. I called the cops right there, heart pounding with a mix of anger and that sinking feeling of violation. The police showed up, issued a verbal warning to them about boundaries, and left me upgrading my security. New locks, motion sensors, the works, because if this was her opening salvo, what came next? And sure enough, it got uglier. Susan, stung by the embarrassment, twisted the story and reported me for supposedly brandishing a firearm at innocent women enjoying a neighborhood amenity. Cops at my door again, this time eyeing me suspiciously, asking questions that made my stomach churn. I could feel the isolation creeping in, wondering if the whole community saw me as the villain now. But I had footage, cameras don't lie, and showed them how I wasn't even home that day, how Susan had snuck in alone, probably scouting for dirt. The officer watched, shook his head, and off the record, whispered, "Watch your back. She's got connections on the board, pushing to expand HOA Turfier Hills prime real estate." In her eyes, that lit a fire in me. It wasn't just about a pool anymore. It was her hunger for control, maybe rooted in her own failed attempts to buy land up here years ago, turning personal grudge into a power play that manipulated the whole neighborhood. I wasn't about to roll over, hell no. I'd inspected enough shady deals to know how to fight smart. So, I emailed the HOA, all polite and strategic, proposing a limited pool access trial to promote harmony. But I had my lawyer draft it with a sneaky clause buried in the fine print. Any violation, and the signer forfeits board eligibility for 5 years. Susan bit hard. signing without a glance, greed blinding her, I suppose, or arrogance thinking she'd outsmart me. We set it for a weekend, and oh man, it was chaos from the start. Her group showed up, not just swimming but blasting music, leaving trash everywhere, even damaging the filter system like they were entitled to wreck what wasn't theirs. I documented it all, timestamps, videos, the works, and fired off a notice. Agreement breached, clause invoked. Susan exploded in her reply email. This is ridiculous, you tricked me. But her signature sealed it, and I could almost hear her fuming, that mask of civility cracking under the weight of her own overreach. Word spread like wildfire after that, and suddenly, I wasn't alone. Anonymous notes started appearing, not threats this time, but confessions from residents tired of Susan's reign, how she'd hiked fees unfairly, faked votes to absorb properties, all to feed her ego and maybe line her pockets with misused funds. Then Mike and Lisa Donovan, this sweet couple from down the block, knocked on my door one evening, eyes weary but determined, sharing stories of her bullying them over their garden, calling it an eyesore, when really, it was jealousy over their independence. She's been plotting to loop in outsiders like you for years, Mike said, voice low. To boost her power, beseats not community, it's control. We bonded over coffee, their grievances mirroring mine, and together, we rallied for a reform vote, me supplying emails and footage as ammo. It felt empowering, like turning the tide on a bully who'd thrived on division. Her motivation's clear now, a mix of envy, fear of losing status, and that twisted belief that rules bent only for her. The vote night was electric, turnout massive, folks whispering in the community hall as ballots piled up. Results came in, 62% for charter reform, stripping those invasive policies, and 58% to boot Susan out. She stood there, red-faced, screaming, "This is invalid, I demand a recount." But I stepped forward, calm as could be, waving the signed agreement. "You violated it yourself, Susan. 5 years off the board, remember?" The room erupted, cheers from some, gasps from others, and that's when the leaks hit. Someone tipped a local blogger about her falsified docs and fund misuse, and it went viral. Posts racking up thousands of shares, news segments replaying her accidental on-air slip where she admitted, "Well, sometimes you have to bend rules for the greater good," only to backpedal furiously. It was cinematic, almost her downfall unfolding like a thriller, cameras flashing as she stormed out, the crowd parting like she was a fallen queen. The fallout was swift and satisfying. County investigators swooped in, subpoenas flying, and Susan countersued me for defamation, but it got dismissed faster than her excuses. Court hit her hard. Charges for falsifying documents, criminal trespass, false reports, plea deal landed her 90 days in jail, probation, and $65,000 in restitution, most to me for the damages and headaches. The HOA reformed to no more force sharing, charter revised to actually serve people, not dominate them. Elena took over as president, a level-headed type who sent apologies rippling through the neighborhood, and slowly, things healed. Barbecues without tension, folks waving instead of whispering. Me? I beefed up security, even more, taller fence, floodlights, a big sign by the pool. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted, no exceptions. Got an anonymous thank you note one day, probably from Mike or someone else we'd freed, and now I sit here, sipping coffee, enjoying the quiet I'd fought for. But looking back, it makes you wonder, was Susan just a product of a broken system, or did her personal demons drive the whole mess? And what about justice in these tight-knit communities? Does it always require someone like me pushing back, or could talking it out have worked? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Was I too harsh, or did she get what she deserved? Share your own HOA horror stories or how you'd handle a neighbor like that. Let's keep the conversation going, because stories like this remind us, community should lift us up, not tear us down.